I'd say making sure everyone gets, well, I thought of two different things. Inclusion as in inclusion of all types of education, as in like make sure you got all your bases covered and what you're learning, or inclusion as in like the people who are being educated, so everyone has a fair chance of actually getting an education.
I feel like it's including things outside that you should teach. Like if you've been teaching for a while, you're going to include like different ways to do stuff, like in math, or including different aspects of learning into your aspect of learning. Like in science, you're going to include math, or in history, you're going to include English.
I don't really know.
Kind of offering an opportunity for everyone to feel involved and feel like they're a part of something, feel like they're a part of society or a part of the community, no matter what, disability, religion, gender, age, whatever.
I have no idea.
Various things. One, making sure that everybody has access to a decent education, that the quality of the education they are offered is not dependent upon who they are or where they live, that public funds are available in appropriate quantities, unlike how it's actually practiced in the state.
Inclusion is making sure like everybody is like together and everybody's involved and everyone receives equal chances.
I don't have any idea.
I think it's the equal opportunity for individuals to get the education that they need and or deserve or want.
Like, that just means to participate in every activity and everything be included, I guess.
I think inclusion is making sure everyone has the opportunity to get the same education.
Inclusion is where you have special ed students included in the general ed setting, so the students would work together. It would be one class, and there would be two teachers, a special education teacher and a general education teacher.
We used to call things learning disabilities, but now I've heard they're calling them learning differences, which I kind of like. But I'd say that's kind of a special need because like ADD, you can't focus at all, which I actually have. So Clemson does a good job of accommodating for that. But I'd say like anything that hinders your ability to learn.
Down syndrome or deaf. We had 2 deaf kids.
There's autism, Asperger's. Is that a form of autism? No, I think it is. And then, you said 4?
Just a few.
Yeah, and then Downs.
Special needs kind of can be a lot of different things. They can range from, mental disabilities, like people have ADHD, depression, stuff like that. I think a lot of people have special needs, and maybe they're, not as severe, they're not really noticeable to an outside person, and it ranges all the way to things like autism, Down syndrome, stuff like that, physical disabilities, people in wheelchairs, stuff like that, other special needs, stuff like that.
Physical disabilities that can be constituted as special needs. There's emotional disabilities. There's mental disabilities, which could include autism and anything in that spectrum. And there are a lot of things that people need assistance with.
And the most obvious ones are physical and mental differences in individuals who may, for example, have physical disabilities, vision or hearing issues, or mental differences that make them learn differently, particularly Down syndrome or people on the autism spectrum may respond better to different types of education than the mass populace.
I think there's like a wide variety. Like it could be from like needing extra assistance, extra time on test, to like autism or Down syndrome.
Special need may be related to some students, like with disability, they may have some special needs.
ADHD, autism, Down syndrome, depression, anything that causes difficulties.
I guess, I'm going blank.
It could be like some dyslexia, ADD, depression, or like physical special needs, like being in a wheelchair.
There's autism, there is ADHD or any of the hyperactivity disorders, there is learning disabled, there is emotionally disabled, there is trainable with mental disabilities, there is Down syndrome.
It depends either on the child with the special need or even the rest of the class. Like if the class is nice and the teacher knows what to do, I'd say it'd be okay if they're in the same classroom. But you'd have to have a teacher who knows what they're doing to handle, I think, both sides of that learning spectrum.
I think that it benefits the students to be in certain classes where they feel like they're a part of something, but like they wouldn't be in an honors course because they would feel like they're getting left behind, I feel like. But in like a regular English class or like home economics or stuff like that, they would feel like they're a part of something and it make them feel better, and it would make me feel better. So
I think in some ways it could help them, but I don't know. I think it's better to get interaction with everyone. I don't think it should be separated in their own class.
I think that's a hard question to answer because I think that they should feel both included in society, so feel like they're a part of a society, a normal person, but at the same time, some people with special needs need a lot more attention, a lot more curriculum or stuff focused around them to make them perform better.
I think it depends on the disability. If it's very impairing of the person, then they might benefit from outside classrooms. But if it's not as intense, then maybe being in a mainstream classroom might be beneficial.
I would not like to see them excluded. I think that they may need separate classrooms for certain things. They may need supplemental help. But if possible, where they can learn with the other kids, they should be included with the other kids. They are not different people. They are just people who have different ways of learning.
I think it benefits them to be able to feel involved and a part of the average.
I think they should be included in the same classroom because they need to feel included. Good.
I think it really depends on the severity of their disability. I think both can have their positive and negative effects, but I think it really depends upon each person. I think each case is definitely different.
I don't really know if that's for me to say. I've never really had a special needs. Honestly, it all depends on everything. Education depends on multiple scenarios. So, let's say if they have Down syndrome, that's kind of an iffy subject because I have a Down syndrome friend who's just as smart as me, but it takes a little bit of time to learn, and they learn a different way, and everyone learns a different way. So, to be included in the classroom, definitely. So everyone needs inclusion. What am I saying? Yes.
I think they should be included in the same classroom as everyone else if it's possible. But if it's slowing down the pace of the class too much, they could need their own class.
Well, I think there's a need for both, to be honest with you, because the students that just have a slight learning disability can certainly benefit from the general education peers, because then they're going to be immersed in a classroom where they're learning all sorts of things and they can learn from each other. And children learn from their peers, and that's a wonderful setting. Also, inclusion includes 2 teachers in the room, so awesome right there, where there's help from the teacher that might be teaching the lesson, that's instructing that at that moment, but then the other teacher is circling and she's just going to each student, are you okay, can I help you, do you get, and she can pull students at that time, review the lesson. It's awesome. It's a wonderful thing. But there's also a need for self-contained classrooms where students are functioning very, very low, and they need less students in the classroom. They need more adult supervision. So there's a need for both.
I'd say, again, if it's a good teacher, yes. If the teacher's not doing it very well, I'd say it could probably distract from their learning, either because they have to slow down or because it's just taught differently. But if it's a good teacher, I feel like it would help, and it gives them exposure to what the real world's like. Like, there are other people out there, not everyone is like everyone else.
I don't know.
I think it does because I think that it's really important for people to learn how to be tolerant and be accepting of people who are different from you, and really learn to work with them and help them be a member of society.
Yeah, I think if students with disabilities were included in other students' lives, and they would have more awareness of disabilities and be less judgmental or less, just more educated about those topics.
I think exclusion hurts because it teaches them that these kids are different and should be treated differently. So it's not that inclusion helps, it's that exclusion hurts.
It enables them to like know how to deal with like vice versa, like how to deal with it and deal with those situations.
I think special needs students are also part of the regular people, so I don't think they should be treated any differently. So I'm not sure if they are benefited, but they should be included.
I believe so. It allows for them to work with people that they might not choose to, and it prepares them for individuals that they might face in the real world that you can't always hide from them, and you need to face them.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it does benefit everyone. Just to see that they can learn, just like everyone else can.
Absolutely. I mean, general education students need help as well. And so there are, in any classroom, you have the students that are just a little bit below, those that are right in the middle, and those that are really, they understand the work and they're kind of high. So you may give them extra work. You may give them work that, because they're early finishers. The regular students that are right in the middle, they're keeping up, they're understanding. But then you also have a few that may need you to review something, and so there's that other teacher there that's beneficial because she walks around or he walks around, he's there, she can pull 2 or 3 students. They may be special needs students, but maybe they're not. Maybe they're just students who didn't understand what the lesson was, and so that's beneficial for them to have that other person there.
The thing that surprised me about everyone's responses to what is inclusion was not that, with the obvious exception of Julie Dismangles, that they didn't know what inclusion was. In fact, I would have been really surprised if they had. But that most everyone thought it meant that everyone be included in every aspect of education, regardless of any other circumstances. I was also surprised how often people listed physical needs as a special need. It's not something I'd ever really considered, that physical needs cause an issue with education. One or more people mentioned depression, which is a special need, but it surprised me that it was mentioned. And ADHD was a really common one, which shouldn't surprise me, but it did. Autism, Down syndrome, these are the things I think of, these more severe cases of special needs, these self-contained classrooms type disorders that I think about when I think of special needs. I also found it interesting that most everyone agreed that people with special needs should not be in separate classrooms, but that sometimes it's necessary based on the severity of the need, and that both special needs people and regular education students are benefited by inclusion. Overall, especially considering that I was, for the most part, pulling random people on campus to answer these questions, I was surprised how similar everyone's idea of what having a special need and being included in education should look like. Generally, people think inclusion is a good thing based on what they think inclusion is. And the people with special needs are part of our community and need to be involved in the regular education classroom as much as possible, but they understand that that's not always the case. I think people generally think inclusion is what we know as mainstreaming. And it would have been interesting to have asked what is mainstreaming and seeing what their responses would have been to that.